You know, some industries, they kind of give us a sneak peek of the future before the rest of us even see it coming. Today, we're going to look at how one of the most surprising industries of all might just hold the original blueprint for our modern work life. I know it's a provocative question, but it gets right to the heart of this massive shift in how we all work. In this explainer, we're going to dive into how the economic structure of the adult film industry provides this unlikely but incredibly powerful model for the gig economy that now defines so many of our careers. All right, to really get this, we've got to shift our whole perspective. It means we need to move way beyond the usual debates about morality and instead start looking at this industry through a totally different lens, the lens of labor. And this is where it gets really interesting, right? The public conversation almost always gets stuck on morality, sex, and stigma. But a labor analysis, the one we're doing today, it changes the focus completely. We start talking about economics, about the work itself and the underlying systems. And that is where the real insights are hiding. So, our guide through all this is the academic Heather Berg and her incredible book, Porn Work. Berg's whole argument is that the conditions porn workers have been dealing with for decades are exactly the same conditions that are now becoming super common across the entire economy. So, you might be asking, why would someone get into this work in the first place? Well, Berg's research shows that for a lot of people, it's a very conscious choice to escape what she calls straight work. You know what I mean? Those traditional jobs with rigid schedules, bad pay, and just that feeling of being totally stuck. They're looking for autonomy. But what they find is a whole different kind of economic pressure. And this right here is the absolute core of the argument. The adult industry didn't just stumble into this way of doing things. It has been operating as a full-blown gig economy for a very, very long time. So what does that even mean? This concept, late capitalist gig labor? It sounds complicated, but the idea is actually pretty simple. It's a system where the individual worker, not the big company, has to shoulder all the risk. We're talking economic risks, health risks, all of it. And it all happens in this super unstable, constantly shifting market. Sound familiar? Okay, so this system has a few key ingredients, and I bet they're going to sound super familiar. It always starts with this big promise of autonomy. Be your own boss. But the reality, it's usually precarity, this feeling of constant uncertainty. The worker is basically forced to become an entrepreneur, which is really just a fancy way of saying all the risk gets pushed onto them. And maybe the biggest one of all, work isn't something you do from 9 to 5 anymore. It just kind of bleeds into every single part of your life. And this quote from Berg just nails it. As she writes, this so-called new economy that so many of us are trying to figure out, it's not new at all. Porn workers have been living in it and figuring out how to survive it for decades. Okay, so if that's the system, how do you survive in it? Well, that leads to this dynamic of constant adaptation, something we can call the hustle and the hack. This quote right here from an industry publicist, it unlocks everything. The official job, the thing you see on screen, performing in a scene for a studio, that's not the main event, not even close. It's just an advertisement. So check this out. Here's the playbook. A performer does a scene for a big studio. But that scene is just marketing. It's designed to drive fans not back to the studio, but to the performer's own platforms, their subscription sites, their webcam shows. That's where they capture direct revenue and build their own personal brand, totally separate from any one employer. And Berg has this great term for this whole process, pornodialectics. It's basically all the creative strategies, all the little loopholes and hacks that workers come up with. See, they're not just passive victims of the system. They're actively subverting it and reshaping it to make it work for them. And some of these hacks are just genius. Like, for example, when producers started making performers bring their own wardrobe, what did they do? They started selling that worn lingerie to fans, literally turning a company cost into their own personal profit. And they build these powerful, informal networks to share info and support each other, all outside the official system. Okay, let's zoom out. Let's bring this all back home and see how this whole model is basically a mirror for our own work lives. Because this isn't just about one industry anymore. This pattern has gone completely mainstream. So this right here, this is the blueprint for modern work. I mean, just think about it. The blurred lines between your job and your personal life. That constant, endless pressure to build a personal brand on social media. How about the demand to be authentic and passionate as part of your job description? And of course, the huge shift of risk and responsibility from big companies onto your shoulders. That's the gig economy. And that right there is the real takeaway. The crisis here isn't what we all think it is. By getting so focused on the morality of sex, we completely miss the much, much bigger story this industry has been telling us for years about the fundamental reality of work in our time. So I want to leave you with this final, really critical question. And it's for every single one of us, no matter what we do for a living. In an economy that demands we turn our lives into our brands, who really owns the final product?